Yeah, 24.48.
What page?
Page 46, towards the bottom of the page. And substitute language said, remove all parking minimums.
All right, 24.8. All right, so we have a motion and a second by Commissioner Schissler. Is there opposition to this? I would really? I know. All right, you want to speak to your motion?
I do have some comments here. So the idea of completely eliminating parking requirements may sound radical, but it's not. Every month, more and more cities are abolishing minimums, either completely, like Buffalo, New York, and Mexico City, or for specific areas, just as Austin has downtown. I have no doubt that if staff delivered their recommendation 5 years from now, they would have suggested no minimums. And it's not because I have some utopian vision of Google cars and gondolas, but it's simply because parking minimums don't work. In fact, minimums exacerbate exactly some of Austin's biggest problems: affordability, traffic, flooding, and preservation of character. Affordability, the Obama administration Housing Development Toolkit points out that cost of developing parking from $5,000 for a surface parking lot to $60,000 underground directly affects affordability. Every meeting, we try to encourage building family-friendly apartments with the current Austin regulations. Putting more bedrooms in a building increases the required parking. Making the rooms bigger doesn't. This incentivizes building large, luxury, one-bedroom apartments, further eroding affordability. In traffic, go to Barton Creek Mall on any Friday night and you'll see people cruising up and down the aisles, looking for a space near the nearest movie theater entrance. But even on Black Friday, you won't find every single place taken. And pushing the buildings further apart for unneeded parking makes pedestrian experience less pleasant, less safe, and paradoxically encouraging more driving and, of course, the need for more parking spaces. And regarding flooding, a good rule of thumb is that you can put 150 spots on an acre parking lot. No sidewalks, no detention ponds, no tree every 9 spaces, just blacktop and stripes. The Grove contains about 75 acres. I mean, if we devoted the entire thing to parking, no parks, no homes, no stores, just blacktop and stripes, it could provide a little over 11,000 spots to meet the minimum parking requirements under today's code. For the 135,000 homes needed in our blueprint, it'll take 24 Grove-sized parking lots. That's just the impervious cover required for our homes. That doesn't include spaces for our work, school, and play. And finally, on preservation, before I joined the PC, I served on the E. Cesar Chavez planning team, where we saw an agent who requested a parking variance to change the use on a garage that sat behind an old service station. The service station had been converted into retail, but he needed a few additional spaces to convert the garage to office. No new construction was planned. He presented to the team where I and a few others spoke in favor of a variance, but others on the contact team said no, come back with another plan. A few days later, he wrote back to the chair and me trying to get an idea of what was acceptable. I quote, "My alternative off-the-cuff solution didn't seem to receive any additional support, and one member mentioned that there would be no support for any street parking, not even a variance for one parking space." We wrote back that we had to support the vote of the majority. 2 days later, he wrote back, "Please pull our project off your agenda as we have withdrawn our application for the BOA." A short time later, he filed a demo permit for the service station that held the Jumpaline Pinata store.
Thank you. In opposition, Commissioner Seeger.
As one that doesn't have access to any public transportation, in order to go downtown when there's no parking, I would need public transportation because I'm not going to walk or bike. But I have to drive 4.5 miles to the nearest bus stop. How will this help people in my situation? I know it will help the downtown area and those that have access to buses and other modes of transportation, but I don't. And those in my neighborhoods out in far west Austin don't necessarily have access to good transportation. How would we get people from that area to downtown if there's no parking once they get there?
All right, in favor.
Chair. Mr. Murphy, we put back up that graphic on parking. So we adopted the strategic housing blueprint. This is now a part of Imagine Austin. And it's very clear on what parking does to development. It drives up the cost unnecessarily. Even though the example just given, what happens if I go downtown with a motor vehicle? Chances are, for you to be going there, there's somebody trying to cater to you for you to be there. And there are still parking spaces being built downtown Austin today, quite a few of them. But if we're going to, off-space parking requirements are just devastating American cities. I think the average right now is there are 8 parking spaces for every single automobile in America. And think about that. Think about, we say we care about impervious cover. We say we care about flooding and affordability and walkability and all of these things that are directly devastated by parking. Has anybody walked by a big surface parking lot and thought, wow, I sure do love where I am right now? It destroys place. No better thing destroys place than surface parking, and parking requirements dictate that we destroy place in a programmable way. It's like we are requiring you to destroy space and subsidize parking and subsidize the single biggest creator of pollution in our city that we're going to come in contact with on a daily basis. I'm on my bike every single day with vehicles spewing in my face, and I don't need a parking space, but yet I'm required to subsidize folks who do. And for the folks who want to bring their motor vehicle with them, they're still going to have that opportunity to. But for the folks of us who don't, allow us to live a little bit more sustainably and a little bit more affordably.
Against. Commissioner White.
So looking through kind of all of these recommendations and looking at the parking, the staff response to both increases in parking and decreases in parking is both no. So staff thinks that they have struck the perfect balance and are unwilling to move in either direction. I don't think that's anybody else's take on it. I think that everybody feels one way or the other that there's too much or too little. I can support the reduction in parking. Eliminating all parking minimums sounds a little scary to me, mainly because of the ADA accessibility. That would mean that we were cutting down on so many of those I'm concerned about. I'd also concerned about the effect on public safety. I'd like to have some input from the fire department on what this could mean, from transportation. I'm also concerned, I would also like to find ways to encourage resident parking and metered parking in exchange for the amount of parking that we're allowing commercial to not do, because maybe that would help balance the street parking, which seems to be the number one concern of those who are afraid of the reduction in parking. So I'm going to offer an amendment to, to direct staff to get as close to no parking requirements while balancing ADA accessibility, finding ways to finding ways to make it easier for neighborhoods to use residential parking and metered parking as a solution, and that it be vetted through the fire department and EMS, public safety.
Okay, so I want to make sure people understand. I want to make sure people understand what the motion is, so they know what they're seconding. That your amendment is for staff to attempt to get as close to a parking minimum of 0, while directing staff to find ways to increase the availability of meter parking and RPP in neighborhoods, and vet any proposals through the fire department. Does that make anything?
So,
Don't be a substitute motion.
She's asking it to get as close to 0 as possible.
A substitute is a type of amendment.
So I see, because she was saying get as close to, she didn't give a number. She didn't say get to 50% or whatever. I don't know.
would you be willing?
It's okay.
Would you be willing to say excluding the areas we've already said no parking?
Oh, sorry. Yes, excluding the areas that we've already said no parking.
So
On is you're seconding?
I'll second it, and I wanted to bring up that this basically was in our working group backup that had started this, and I guess should I just read this? I mean, because it's in our backup from our working group that we started creating. Basically, it lists all this stuff, but it's a little bit different, but it talks about considering street parking availability, because there are already no parking zones. There's street widths that you need to consider, presence of sidewalks, distance to public transportation, distance to schools, residence parking only permits, fire safety compromises, lot widths and driveway placements, trash pickup and utility placements, safe streets analysis. It talks about transportation safety improvement program, which is out there. It talks about Vision Zero, that whatever parking reductions to get to as close to zero, I mean, we need to consider how we're impacting the streets.
So is that list then, are you suggesting maybe there's a criteria that someone met that criteria, they could offer zero parking?
No, that's gonna stay.
Am I say it again?
There was a list of criteria for consideration as to that's very context sensitive in the working groups list. So that makes it very difficult to make it a zoning decision. It makes it a site-by-site consideration of what's available and what's not available. If you're going down the road towards the amendment being part of that list being part of the amendment, then are you asking, you can get zero if you do these things?
I guess the only reason why I would shy away from that is just because I think that as a direction to staff, I don't want to be as prescriptive.
Okay.
I would like to include life safety.
So, okay,
things
that's fine.
listed,
So there's
and-
no other goal other than get to 0%. You're not going to give another number of any kind, just get as close to zero.
I'm going to say get as close to
Okay.
zero.
All right,
with-
so is everybody, so do you understand your understanding of the motion? Are you good with it?
Yeah, this is the amendment, and I second the amendment.
Second Amendment, okay.
Sorry. I'm not quite clear if Commissioner White's amendment includes, is there a place to put your garbage can? Because that's what I heard from Commissioner Shea, and I don't think I heard that from.
These are consideration factors for the staff to consider in deciding how close they can get to zero.
I'm sorry,
Right, but
but
I'm not
my
sure that-
amendment is more broad than that.
Okay.
I'm not listing these as part of my amendment.
So the amendment is still just to get as close to zero, that with no conditions.
With
No,
conditions.
She said fire department vetting, RPP, metered parking, as increased RPP and metered parking availability.
Okay.
And the ADA language that we associated with the TOD.
Okay, and ADA language.
Okay, I'll still second it. There's other things that can be picked up in a
Okay.
different motion, but I'm still going to second it because that's.
Okay, so we have a motion for amendment with a second. Is there opposition to this? Commissioner Schissler?
I might have, am I allowed to have one more amendment? Or can I ask?
No, we can't amend amendments.
We're voting on the amendment.
Yeah, we're voting on the amendments.
Trinity.
Is opposed? Commissioner Schissler?
Yeah, the market's gonna drive, if you've got a house with a 25-foot setback, you're gonna have a driveway that you can put two cars in. If you build a house, you're gonna wanna have a garage for it. I think the market drives it. The office buildings downtown, half of them are parking levels and half of them are office. Even though there's zero required, I think anybody that goes for a loan, the banks or the financing are going to want to have parking spaces. By setting it to zero, we just let the market govern, and which is what other cities have done.
I have a question for the motion maker. Let's just say that the parking in the current in draft 3 in any given zone is 75% of what it is today, and staff got to 74% of what it is today. Does that meet the intent of your goal? Does that meet the intent of your motion? If staff was able to reduce the percentage required by 1%, and they said that's as far as we could get, are you satisfied that staff did their job?
I don't know. I don't think that decreasing by 1% would be actually taking it back and trying to find a way to make it get close
Your
to zero.
expectations are that it is more than a very minimal amount.
My expectation is that it's more than a very minimal
Okay,
amount.
that-
If they
then
come
I'm in
back
support.
and they say the world is going to end if we reduce it any more than that, then certainly I would say I think 1% is okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Question for the motion maker.
What's it? Yes.
Would you be at all amenable to not having RPP in there? That's the biggest thing I hear so many complaints about from so many people, is just that it's just privatizing public streets in weird ways.
If you don't have a car, then you don't have to worry about the RPP, and nobody's going to have a car. So I think the RPP is a way to balance out we're asking a lot. I mean, we own a lot of cars in this city. Where do you get to put them?
Okay.
So I wouldn't leave that as part of it.
All right.
Well, let me, I guess, finish speaking to that. I'm going to speak in support.
Speak in support. Okay.
Which is that, if we have parking benefit districts and RPP, like, we can figure out ways to where the people who might have a perception of feeling the pinch because they live nearby popular areas where parking is reduced and they think it's going to go to them, well, now they have answers of RPP and parking benefit districts. I guess my big hope with staff is that they would be figuring out ways to produce RPP. I remember RPP coming to East or Chavez, and there's a participation where the neighborhood gets around 51% of the profits of that to help reinvest in their neighborhood, and they're enjoying that and having a great time with that. And to see that in more areas would be a really great benefit for everybody, especially when it's all going to sidewalks, which helps everybody.
Speak in opposition. Commissioner
I have
McGraw.
a substitute motion.
We have we can't substitute on the substitute on the amendment.
Okay.
Okay. So anyone else speak in opposition? Staff wants to speak.
So I understand where Commissioner White, where you're going with this. I will tell you that, again, we, as Chair Oliver said, we've dropped the parking. Plus, we have the parking reductions, which you can get to get it down another 60%. Or you can do a TDM program. Also, if you have a parking management district where a study has been done, then you can get your numbers down to zero as well. I raise this because working with staff, we have looked already at ways of offering many ways of getting that number down very close to zero. With the benefit of when you're in a parking management district, or you're in a residential permit parking district, or you're in a TDM program, you are also asking of the developer to provide actual methods that help someone not have to have a car. So the bicycle parking, or the transit stop, or all these other things. I only raise this because a clean vote on saying minimum of zero is, I don't know what we would come back with your motion. A clean vote on zero, we can implement. What you're asking for is, I don't know that there would be dramatic changes. As Chair Oliver said, like, it might be a change from 75 to 70, which I don't know if that's enough for what you're asking.
Okay. Other cities have figured stuff out, and it sounds like Commissioner White's motion is to make it more aggressive than what's currently in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
The only other thing I would add is what Commissioner Shea said essentially is the kind of study you would do to put a parking management district in place, or what you would do under a small area planning process. So again.
Understood. Thank you.
So my only direction towards that would be, I think if we're going to move closer to 0%, then those things that are community benefits, that are options that would get you down lower, maybe those just become mandatory and you get that reduction flat out in your zoning. So those might be creative ways that we could get lower and still get the community benefit. Because I think as a city, we're saying that we're willing to trade in our cars for bikes. So maybe that's where we move towards.
And Commissioner, I just want to say the residential parking permit program is not part of CodeNEXT. You can certainly make a recommendation on that, but that's not part of CodeNEXT.
Understood. Anyone else speaking in favor of the motion? Last speaker. Commissioner Shea.
So I was second on that. And so Commissioner White mentioned the aspect of life safety with the fire department, EMS. So I had sat down with the chief engineer at the fire department to specifically talk about infrastructure and the impact of the stress onto our streets with additional parking. And the concern is that right now, a lot of our street widths are already not in compliance. And if you start parking on both sides, it's very difficult for them to even get their truck down the street. And if for them to even deploy any of the aerial support so they could use their ladders so they can be safe when they get on top of your roof when they're taking care of a fire, they can't even deploy that. So I have no problem with trying to go after a parking reduction, but we cannot, this commission, none of us should be able to say that, hey, this is, with this regard to, to life safety. To me, life safety comes first, above any additional density or whatever, because if we can't take care of and serve the people that we're bringing in, then what's the point? So right now, I mean, the concerns I have is, even when we start talking about parking on the street, well, are there sidewalks? I mean, that's critical in the safety of it. I'm driving down the street and I see parents and the kids walking, and they can't walk on the sidewalk because there is none. You have cars parked on both sides, and only one car could fit through. I don't know how safe that is. If there were sidewalks, if it met the true intent of what we're trying to create, because infrastructure is here, I get it. But if we can't, but if we're going to also keep a fire truck from being able to get to save somebody, because in 4 minutes, without air, you start going through brain damage. So are we really going to compromise that? So I think as long as we keep this in there and we get this, whatever we're doing to get vetted through the fire department to be able to answer and support this in some way or find a workaround with it, because some cities have also started coming up with smaller fire trucks, with other ways of deployment. But we need to really think about this. And I just want to emphasize that EMS, fire, police, they have to be involved in this conversation.
Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
motion to extend to 11.
Second.
Okay. Motion to extend 11. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, abstaining. All right, we're going to 11.
Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner White, would you mind also adding and Vision Zero goals with that? And the reason I ask that is because right now there's a big conversation out in the community about the fire department almost requiring unsafe street widths that are very bad for speeding up all vehicles and coming in contact with peds and bikes. And there's like a huge irony of let's possibly get a fire truck there faster, but in the process make all of our streets more dangerous for pedestrians and cyclists. So if we can just put that through Vision Zero as well.
And there's also the transportation safety improvements.
Hold on.
Are we amending the amendment?
Chair, I thought we couldn't do friendlies.
Yes, we cannot do friendlies. The amendment is supposed to be as is.
Okay.
Thank you. What's that?
Is it time to call the question?
I think, yes, I think it is time to call the question. No, we do. All those in favor of the amended, the substitute / amended language from Commissioner White and seconded by Commissioner Shea, please say aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that passes 8-4. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment that
Yes.
what has been left out of this discussion is the concern of AISD and on-street parking around their facilities. I think that that's a different, but I want to make sure that we come back to that.
Yeah, and that was the perfect segue. Thank you, Commissioner Seeger. In making that motion we just did, I'm looking, and it's 10 o'clock right now. I want us to kind of slow our wheels down a little bit. Many commissioners had motions related to parking subsequent to that one. I need to know what is in alignment to that and what is not. Which ones are now off the table, so we can take a look at this. So,
Chair, do we still have a motion? I mean, we had an amendment.
well, we had an amendment. That's right. So that was not the base.
That was an amendment
Thank you.
that was asking for a study, is my understanding.
No, the amendment. You did an amendment to the base motion, essentially. And thank you, Commissioner McGraw. I was out of order there.
Sorry. I don't know if there's a difference between an amendment and a substitute, but we didn't let her make a friendly to it. We didn't let her make a substitute because it was a substitute.
That's right.
If it had been an amendment, then she could have made a substitute.
That's
So
right.
I think it was a substitute.
There's this kind of borderline between substitute and
I think we called it
So
an
I think
amendment.
it's a
we
substitute.
originally called it an amendment, and,
Okay.
we don't make amendments to amendments.
We don't make amendments.
Right.
But
We're
you-
not making amendments. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
But she could have made a substitute to it.
So now we're back
If
to
it
the
was an
base,
amendment,
and
right?
I'd like to
But
add the amendment.
Robert's Rules of Orders does not distinguish between an amendment and a substitute.
That's exactly correct. But we were taking it up as amendment to the base motion. It passed 8-4. I got ahead of ourselves there. So we're now back, we're with the base motion with the amended language. So it's effectively the same thing. Everybody understand it as such? Okay. All those in favor?
Chair, I would like to add and meet the goals of Vision Zero.
So you want an amendment? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, so we can have now another amendment to the motion.
Can I add?
Yeah,
We had to vote on that first.
I know, but.
Right. And we can go to Commissioner, and we'll take up this amendment, and Commissioner McGraw, or do you want to do a substitute motion to what it was, correct?
Well, yes.
All right,
I
so
think-
you wanted to do a substitute motion to this. What's your substitute motion, and we'll go from there.
I have a second. Do we want to vote on mine real quick? It's pretty easy.
Can I add the?
No, Commissioner McGraw tried to interrupt the conversation earlier in trying to work with a substitute. I want to respect that she was trying to do that, so Commissioner McGraw.
Okay, I think that staff has already done some study on this. But what I would like to do is have a different motion that says that we would like to pursue the idea of further parking reductions, but to that end, we really ask for some more information to be brought back to the Planning Commission at a later date, so we can do a very good planning effort on this. And some of the things we need to consider, one of them is the effect of flag lots. We've approved a lot of small and large subdivisions with a lot of flag lots. I would like to see what's going on in those situations. with
You're talking
parking.
about related to parking.
That's right. What impacts are those having? I would also like to look at metering every commercial street or street in front of commercial businesses in the city if we're going to reduce commercial parking. I would like to consider that, because right now.
And so that would be a direction to staff, because the metering part is not part of,
Right, but
zoning.
these would be factors to look at.
Sure.
Because if they're not metered, some businesses get free parking, some don't.
okay?
I would also like to know how there are current regulations allowing you to go down to 50% of your parking, and they're granting site plans that allow numerous exemptions down to 50%. And I would really like to know how some of those are working, because I've seen some that get granted, they never do the work.
Okay, so
So,
study
you know-
of how existing reductions have worked.
The 40 to 50% reductions are working.
Okay.
Okay? So those are some considerations. There might be some other ones.
All right, so you have, are there other considerations that you want in this list for your motion?
They could consider RPP. I know it's not in their thing, but the effect
Okay,
of RPP.
so it's similar to Commissioner White's, okay.
So these are, and also I really want to look at the criteria that Commissioner Shea mentioned again. Those
Okay, the
criteria
residential
for
work-
residential, the criteria for residential,
Okay,
and then the reductions for commercial, the possible metering of all commercial streets, and the effect of flag lots.
okay.
I think
So
I have
I've
it
got your
there.
list of flag lots, metering of commercial streets, study of existing reductions, further implementation of RPP, and the residential working group criteria as listed by Commissioner Shea earlier. And that is your substitute motion in direction to staff of what to do with parking and make no other changes. You want no other changes?
Oh, wait, I want to be sure that we are going to address the AISD situation.
And
So we might bring that back on a different
Okay.
motion for the immediate future.
Okay.
But this is for some future work that would be part of our recommendation to the council that we would like to pursue this project.
okay.
So I have just a,
No, I want to know if there's a second.
oh, sorry.
Seconded by Commissioner Seeger. Is there opposition to this? Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I would like to move the question
Okay.
on the basis that we can ask for studies after CodeNEXT.
Okay.
And we don't need to spend time on that in our short remaining time.
All right. So you have a
this
call to
fails, it goes
you have a
back to
call
your
to
motion.
question on this, of which you will need 9 votes. Okay.
Sorry, I just don't understand. If this, could we pass that and then still go back to the base motion?
No.
No, it's saying she doesn't want the base motion of going to 0%.
This is
She
in
wants these
addition
things.
to that? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
No, this is a
We shouldn't go to
substitute.
0%. We should study this a little bit more and know what we're doing.
Before saying anything like 0%, do this.
Okay. I want to do all of it.
Okay, I understand. All right. Well, everything she said could go into another amendment. I'm just saying she doesn't want the 0%, so she's looking for a substitute that's not the 0% that has these things. All right, so we have a motion and a second. We have opposition. Speak to your opposition.
Call a question.
Call. Thank you. All right, so we have a call to question and a second. We need 9 votes. All those in favor of calling to question on this item, please say aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, we got it. All right, so any opposed? Okay. All those in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye. 2. All right, 3. Those opposed? Abstaining? Okay, 381. All right, so we're back to our amended motion from Commissioners White and Shea to Commissioner Thompson's original motion. That we had an amendment, a request by Commissioner Anderson. Please go forward with your Vision Zero.
Yes, to add in the goals of Vision Zero, just for staff to look at as they're going through all this to make sure we don't have unnecessarily wide vehicles that are causing death and harm to pedestrians and cyclists.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Hart. And so is there opposition to the amendment of incorporating Vision Zero into the studies?
Can I add something to it?
Part of it. It is.
I mean, I'd like to add the Transportation Safety Improvement Program to this. I don't want to say Vision Zero without talking about the Transportation Safety Improvement Program either. And the two work together, so I don't want to just be one-sided, not the other. So, okay.
You're okay with it? Okay. Is there a second okay with it? Thank you, Commissioner Hart. All right, is there opposition to looking at the transportation safety, something, what was it? And Vision Zero? What was it? Transportation Safety?
Improvement Program.
Improvement Program, thank you.
As well as the Vision Zero program.
Okay, is there any opposition to adding those into the criteria of what we're looking at? What's your question?
Question is, are we voting now on the original
No, we're
amendment?
voting on
Or we're
just
still
the amendment.
on amendments to the original motion?
That's right, just the
Okay.
amendments. Any opposition to this amendment? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Abstaining? All right, passes 11-1 on the amendment. We are now back to our base motion with Commissioner White's amendments and Commissioner Anderson's amendments.
Chair?
Any further amendments?
I move to call the question on Commissioner White's motion.
It's actually Commissioner Thompson's amended motion. It's okay?
That one.
All right, so we have first and a second to call a question on this. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Abstaining? All right, 2 abstainings? All right, that's 10-2 on calling a question on this. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? The motion with the amendments.
Right.
You were calling the question now.
Yes.
That was, we voted to call a question on it. Now we're voting on the motion.
I don't think the whole room understood that.
We're voting on, okay, I'm going to state the motion, everybody. Listen closely. No talking, or you get sent home. Oh, everybody's probably going to talk then. It is Commissioner Thompson's original motion that which was asking for 0%, but was amended with Commissioner White and Commissioner Shea's motion to strive towards 0, ask staff to work towards 0 with RPP meter parking being looked at closely and increased fire department vetting of the information and excluding the areas that we had looked at previously of UNO and TODs. And then it was amended again with the Vision Zero and the Transportation Improvement Program. ADA and the ADA.
Language from down.
The downtown ADA language. Okay. That is a. Downtown already excludes it, of course. Okay, that is our motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Abstaining? All right, so that's 9-3.